Happy New Year and welcome to our District 6 Town Hall here at the great Pasadena Humane Society. I want to express my gratitude to the Humane Society. If you haven't spent time here, they do a fabulous job. I actually haven't called them since Sunday. We found a very healthy domesticated cat who clearly had a collar, and the collar was missing, and we had to call because some of you may not have heard that we have coyotes in our neighborhoods, and so they do a great job for us. And again, I'm super grateful to be here at the Humane Society. Invite you to spend time here if you haven't. They have a great little store downstairs. I should actually let the folks from the Humane Society speak to this. Is Michelle Holbrook, Outreach Coordinator here? Well, in any event, I'm really grateful. We do have Animal Control Officer here. Can you identify yourself, sir? Introduce yourself.
My name is Missy Ortega. I'm the Director of Field Services for Pasadena City, which obviously provide animal control services to this community as well as to the cities.
Great. Well, thank you for all you're doing. I know you've come to City Council and presented when the contracts are brought up for renewal in terms of the regional animal control services. And Taka, is there someone else we want to introduce? Is that Michelle?
Here's Michelle.
Okay, hi Michelle. Thank you for having us. Can we give a warm round of applause for Michelle and the others? Thank you. So I'll introduce some other folks and other thank yous and the like. Being at the Humane Society is not all that foreign for me, given that I'm at City Council every Monday night and we deal with a whole menagerie of issues on a weekly basis. We had our first council meeting since the holidays this just last evening, and we had a short council, 5 members, 6 members, I guess, and not a huge agenda. One of the major items, the 253 South Los Robles, which I know a number of you are aware of and have an interest in, was actually pulled and continued, and we still went till 11-ish in the evening. So, but lots of interesting issues. We had an informational report on the way the city manages traffic and transportation. And we adopted a resolution in support of women, which I was proud to co-author along with my colleague and really the leader on the issue, Margaret McCostin, which was terrific. So good stuff. There's no rest for the weary or the wicked, as the case may be. And we will very shortly get into our budget time as well. We spend several months each year with a whole series of budgets and budget discussions, beginning with the mayor's State of the City address Thursday night, where he will, as the charter provides, present his rough outline of an initial budget for the city. And so I invite you to pay close attention to the budgeting discussions that we have. There's also a document that I highly recommend that's available on the city's website, and it's called the Budget in Brief. You know, the budget is actually, well, we have at least 2 budgets. We have the operating budget and we have the capital budget. So capital is buildings, and as the name suggests, and operating is mostly services, and that means largely the city's 2,000 plus employees. You know, we're a municipal services organization. But it would take you at least a week to read both of those documents. But the Budget in Brief distills all that down into a pamphlet where very quickly you can look at where do we get our revenues, how do we spend those monies, how are we in terms of our financial stability, what's the outlook for the future, and the like. And just since I mentioned that, a quick word, we are on very sound financial footing in Pasadena. You'll hear at the mayor's State of the City that the state of Pasadena is extremely positive and getting stronger as we look forward. There are a few reasons for this. One is, you know, prudent financial management by the city staff and by the city council. So we've now have about $60 million in total reserve funds. We have a goal of 15 or 20% of our operating what's called the general fund budget, to be able to have that in reserve at all time. And then we also have additional reserves that we're holding. You all also approved pretty strongly in political terms two initiatives related to a new sales tax. We had Measure I, which was the additional sales tax increment, and then Measure J, which provided that in terms of an advisory position that the will of the people is that we donate a third of that amount of money to the school district, and those both passed overwhelmingly. And so as a result, the city's going to be getting, somewhere between $14 to $16 million each year in additional sales tax revenue. And then separate and apart from that, the school district should start receiving in this fiscal year a total of $7 to $8 million from the city. So I was a proponent of those measures. I'm glad we adopted them. If we hadn't, the county would have taken that sales tax away from us, and now they can't do that because we acted. And I'm excited about being able to tangibly help the school district in more ways than we already do. I also feel strongly that we need accountability from the school district, and we need to be able to measure how they're using those dollars. So we'll hear about that in the budget discussions. And obviously on all these points, I welcome your input as well. That's probably as good a place as any to introduce Steve Mermel, our city manager. He's the CEO of a municipal services organization with a huge budget and thousands of employees, and he does a great job for us year in, year out. So Steve, thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. I want to very quickly get to the public safety agenda with these great department heads that we have here. But before I do just want to say a word about the election cycle that's coming up. And this is not political. This is from the city's perspective. You probably know already that we have folded our municipal elections into the federal, state, and county elections. So for the first time now this spring, and then again in the fall, the city of Pasadena's municipal elections will be held as part of these broad, presidential, Senate, Congress, 30 state initiatives that are always seemingly on the state ballot and the like. And it's going to be a big change for us. So the quick history of this is that the state adopted legislation directing that general law cities would be required to move into these election cycles with the policy objective of promoting greater turnout. The idea was if you looked at the presidential elections versus the smaller local municipal elections, and even the big cities, there was always a big disparity. People voted in much greater numbers than in the big races, president and senate and the like, than they did for council and school board and the like. So the state did that, but of course we are not a general law city. We are what's called a charter city. And charter cities have special rights and authorities under state law. And so once the legislation was adopted, the question arose, does this new voting rights, sort of politically named by Sacramento legislation, include within its scope charter cities like Pasadena? I actually said no, it doesn't. To me, it's clear it didn't, because the idea with charter cities is charter cities should be allowed to locally control matters of local interest. And the idea in this instance of promoting increased voter turnout in local municipal elections, to me, would be a paradigm of something that local control would be appropriate for. That is to say, Pasadena should be able to decide how to conduct its elections in a way that would promote the greatest turnout. Now, obviously, that wouldn't be true if we were talking about things like discrimination, voting rights being deprived of different groups of people. So if you were talking about the way districts are zoned or things like that, but that wasn't any part of this. This was just about when you have the election and who runs your elections. So we debated whether or not to legally challenge this new legislation, and we decided not to do that. And I also agreed with the unanimous council decision, if I recall, that we not challenge it legally. It's one thing to say the state was wrong. It's quite another to sue them and perhaps be perceived as trying to stand in the way of increased turnout. And even in some people's minds, we might have been viewed as standing for other things that we clearly don't stand for in terms of, voter suppression or limitation or what have you. So we chose not to sue, and we complied. And you may recall we had charter reform where we adjusted our elections to now fall into the same schedule as the federal, state, and county elections. Now, interestingly, another city, Redondo Beach, filed a lawsuit making those same arguments that I just articulated, and they won. The court said, yeah, this is clearly something that the local city. But now there's a practical problem, which is we used to use vendors to provide a lot of very intense services that we wouldn't need other than around the time of elections, in terms of ballot preparation, distribution, and the like, and computer software and what have you. Well, those firms that used to do that are actually all out of business now, because I think Redondo Beach was the only city that challenged the state. So, you probably had 100 or 110 charter cities around the state that all went to this, and then I think there are a little over 300 cities statewide, right? So 88 here in LA County. So in any event, this is what we have now. So now you're going to be part of the big election, and your ballot is going to have everything from, city council member all the way down the line to president and the like. And we still don't yet know, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've been speaking to our city clerk, Mark Jomsky, who runs the voting operations for the city, about this almost on a daily basis. As of yesterday, I don't think we yet knew for sure where our voting centers will be located. So here we are, just a few weeks really out from the beginning of the voting. So one of the features of this too is it's not going to be one day like in the past, or a weekend or what have you. It's going to be 11 days of fun and music. For those of you who remember Woodstock, you'll appreciate that metaphor. But it'll be 11 days of voting now. And the county will establish these voting centers, and there'll be fewer of them than in our city than there were. I mean, you might have gone to the old Red Cross or to the Fire Station 38 or what have you. Those will not be the voting locations for this election any longer, in part because there's 11 days of voting, and you can see we can't close a fire station for 11 days to have elections, like we could work around it for one day in the past. So we're still waiting to find out exactly where the voting centers will be. There will be some voting centers open for 11 days. Then, beginning 4 days out, they will open additional voting centers, because, if you're like my family, we'll all say, oh, we got 11 days to do it, and then, it might end up happening more toward the end, right? And so they expect there'll be a rush of voters on March 3rd, and then in the few days just preceding that. So we'll have additional voting centers. The other interesting, please.
At the Pasadena Senior Center, there's a voting information session sponsored by the League of Women Voters.
Fabulous.
You don't have to be a senior. It's on Monday, January 27th at 1 o'clock.
Can you repeat that, and I'll repeat it into the microphone?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, just the date and the time, and I remember the rest.
Monday, January 27th at 1 o'clock, Pasadena Senior Center. I don't know what.
Fabulous. So Monday, January 27th at 1 p.m. in the afternoon at the Senior Center up at the corner of Holly and Fair Oaks. Raymond, excuse me. So.
It's sad you don't have to be a senior.
Oh, and you don't have to be a senior, yeah, to attend. So, we're still getting information about this, and we'll still be pushing information out. I know the city manager, city clerk are committed to getting that information out on websites and the like. And the other thing that I believe will be a case of the sort of reach exceeding their grasp is they're saying that you can go to any voting center anywhere in the county of LA and vote in any election in your own precinct, basically. So let's say you live here in Pasadena and you work in Manhattan Beach. They're telling us that you can go into a county voting center in the South Bay, say I live on Linda Vista in Pasadena, here's my address, and they'll produce for you a ballot that has the right representatives, city council, member of Congress, assembly, state senate, and all that. I'll believe that when I see it. having, observed many elections in my lifetime and the like. And but certainly I'd tip my hat to the county if they can pull that kind of thing off. What they're saying is it's all going to be electronic and computerized, and you'll get a printout of your ballot. You'll know exactly what you're voting for, and they say it'll all work well, but it'll be different, that's for sure. One thing I want to commend my friend Anthony Portantino, who's our state senator, as you know. He ran a pilot project in LA County that provided, because of the change now where the municipals are now thrown in with all of the bigger, more covered and expensive races like president, for example, that the ballot should begin with the local races. And so that legislation passed, was signed by the governor. So, for example, on our ballots, the first thing you'll see is Pasadena mayor, Pasadena city council member, and the like, right at the top of the ballot. So that, I'm sure, the mayor and some of us would probably save some of those ballots because it'll be cool to see in terms of order of importance, right? The mayor and then the president and all of that. But the idea there, of course, is that we don't want the local races to get lost in the shuffle. We want there to be not just greater numbers of turnout, but more informed, active participation by the electorate. And that's the downside of this is, how much bandwidth do you have for political mail and, television coverage? And, there are presidential debates tonight, for example. So we'll see. Time will tell, I suppose. And I apologize for taking so much time on that, but I do think it's important to anybody that would come to a meeting like this, certainly. Yes, sir.
They'll still have voting by mail, right?
Absolutely. And they're promoting voting by mail. And, if you're one of those persons that has already, permanent vote by mail, you've registered, everything should continue to work just the same way. And you can take your vote by mail ballot into one of the voting centers any of those 11 days or the final 4 days, or even on March 3rd as you have in the past as well. Yes. So if you're curious, you might want to go into one of the voting centers, but if you vote by mail, that's certainly a great way to do it, So. Okay, if there aren't any more questions on that, I want to get to the heart of our agenda. And what we wanted to talk about in a kind of a broader context tonight a little bit is just public safety. I'm a firm believer that if you look at that budget in brief, for example, you'll see that the city's priority in the general fund is safety. I think if you polled the citizenry at large, any city probably, the idea that I dial 911 in an exigent situation and the right expert appears in the right uniform at the right location in a timely, responsive way would be number one, I would say, time and time again in people's minds. I think that is certainly one of the top things that we look to from our city, is we want to know that our public safety resources are effective, proficient as well. So tonight we have our fire chief, Bertrell Washington, is here. Our police chief, John Perez, who I've known since he was a patrol officer, so we won't talk about those ride-alongs 25 years ago and the like. But and then also something I'm very, very proud of is Pasadena is one of only 3 cities in the entire state that has its own city public health department. And our great director of public health, Dr. Ying Go, is here with us as well, because I do want you to think about public safety in a broader perspective than just the cops and the firefighters. Certainly they are right up there at the top in an equal tie, I should say, but certainly also our public health department is an important complement of our public health policy initiatives. And, it's flu season now. I saw that we had a fatality in the region from influenza. We do mosquito vector control. We do anti-smoking initiatives. We work with organizations to combat addiction and alcoholism and the like. There's a lot that we do. So I'm going to try to shut up here and actually turn it over to our 3 guests. And I'll start with Dr. Go to talk to us about trends and concerns in public health. So please welcome Dr. Go. Thank you. Thank you. Happy New Year.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here, and we were so happy to receive the invitation to a public safety meeting, because we in public health have a lot of programs and services that do contribute to public safety, and we work very closely with our partners in the city. We thought it would be a good opportunity to talk about our homeless programs and services, specifically one of those programs, which is the Pasadena Outreach Response Team. And at this time, I want to introduce and ask the team to come up, because I'm just going to speak very briefly, and I'm going to have our team who actually deliver the services to speak more. So come on up. I've got Angelica Palmeros. She's the division manager for social and mental health services in our public health department, and she is has her master's in social work. Oh, hey, how are you? You tell me again. Can you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is August Jimenez. I work with Union Station Homeless Services as a peer housing navigator on the Pasadena Outreach Response Team.
I'm so glad you're here. I didn't know that you'd be able to be here. And then we have Sandra Olivas, who has her bachelor's in social work, but is working on her master's, and Tony Z, who is our EMT and firefighter. And so you can see already that we have a collaboration between departments on this team. So it's really important for us to start, I think, with a common definition of homelessness, and that's provided to us by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD. And so, we know that homelessness exists when people lack a safe, stable, and appropriate place to live. HUD includes 4 different categories of people. People who are literally homeless, those who don't have a fixed, regular, or adequate nighttime experience. Second, we have those who are at imminent risk of being homeless. Third, youth or families with children who qualify under other federal programs. So that might be someone a family who's unstably housed. So they may be on couch surfing or in a residence, but have to move frequently because of their inability to have stable housing. And finally, someone who is fleeing domestic violence. So those categories of people. And the number that we have for the number of people who in 1 year in the United States experienced an episode of homelessness is 2.5 million to 3.5 million people. It's such a big number. 1.35 million of them are children, which is staggering to me as a pediatrician. And over 1 million of those people are working full-time or part-time, but they cannot afford housing. How is this a public health concern? Well, in a lot of ways. We know we have a lot of data that show that there are higher rates of tuberculosis, hypertension, asthma, diabetes, HIV and AIDS, and higher hospitalization rates among people who are homeless. We manage 5 to 7 cases of active tuberculosis in the city of Pasadena alone per year. Some of those are multi-drug resistant, very difficult cases, and we have to treat people. We observe them taking their therapy every day for 6 months, four or more drugs, sometimes 6, for 6 months to 2 years. And so you can imagine when we have people who have multiple homes who have tuberculosis, and we have people who have no home. So you can imagine the challenge of the issues that we have to address, not just the taking of the medication, but the other needs that people have to be able to heal and get better from tuberculosis. We know that the rates of mental illness among people who are homeless in the U.S. are twice the rate found for the general population. And we know, of course, in public health, we care about mortality and life expectancy. And we know that homelessness is associated with a much shorter life expectancy. Finally, and then I'll turn it over to our team, one of the fundamental values of all of us who work in public health is that of health equity. And we know that what that means is that we believe that every person deserves a fair and just opportunity to have the best health possible. And with homelessness, we know that there are certain groups that are at greater risk of homelessness. And there's just a disparity in health outcomes as a result. And those people, in particular, are veterans, racial and ethnic minorities, and for youth, those who are LGBTQ, victims of human trafficking, youth who are parenting, or those who are involved in the foster care or juvenile justice system. They're at greater risk of homelessness. So, I do have 2 more facts. I just learned this today from our housing department. Since 2011, the number based on our one-night homeless count that we do annually, our numbers of homeless have gone down by 55%. This past year, it was 542 folks who were counted on that one night for the homeless count. And one demographic fact that I thought was very interesting was that 40% of people in Pasadena who are experiencing homelessness are age 50 or older. And so that's a population that's growing. It increased by 69% since 2016. So with that, I'll turn it over. Angelica, are you going to?
Yeah.
Okay. Please come to the microphone.
Okay. Thank you so much for having us tonight. Just wanted to describe a little bit about how the Pasadena Outreach Response Team came about and the need. So we were funded by SAMHSA, which is the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration, and we were given a grant for 5 years. And so we had to look at innovative ways of addressing homelessness. And so this came about looking at mental illness and other issues, around substance abuse, and also the need to work across departments and community. So we actually partner with our fire department because there is obviously a need to address homelessness, and so there's no wrong door to come in to get services. So that was something that we looked at. It's also looking at a change in how we provide our services from a systematic point of view. So we also look at not only what's going on with the individual, and what's happening, but also what's happening at a larger level, what our systems are doing to help our individuals. So this grant allows us to collect data, to look at the challenges, to look at what we're learning and how we can better work together. And this came about also working with the Union Station, but also having a peer outreach worker with us who is giving us also perspective on the challenges and can speak on behalf of those who are really experiencing homelessness. And also as, providers, we get to learn from firsthand, the stories that happen and really listening. So this program, even though it started with this concept, it has evolved throughout we're in our 3rd year. So we're having 2 more years, and we're learning more about it, but it's really coming from designed from a community input. And that means the people that we serve really are shaping how we're providing these services, and we're learning how to better respond. Some of the things obviously that we're learning is that it does take, a village, like they say, to really help one person, to really house them and really support their effort to remain sober, to be able to even have those life skills and really have that quality of life that we're looking for. So that's one of the areas where we actually have our case manager and the firefighter who's really looking at this partnership about when we have several people coming through the ER, the calls that are happening, what's happening, along in our department, also in the fire department, to see how we can better respond and support, our teams. So I think we have right now about 110 participants in the program who we're assisting, and we obviously reach out to ongoing basis, on regular basis, I would say outreach at least on regular context, 200 people, that we come across.
Can you describe how
we do it?
Yeah.
So the program is really a field-based program. We don't do anything in the office. We don't expect the individual to come to the office. We're actually an office on wheels, and we tend to provide the services on wherever we're at. We pull out the chairs, the tables, we have our laptops, whatever we need to do to assess. There's occasions where people, one example that I'll give is we'll encounter someone who's ready for sobriety, who's really struggling and who doesn't know, but builds this relationship with the team, the trust building process, which happens over time. It doesn't happen sometimes on the first, but occasionally can happen on the 3rd encounter that we have. And so the person is ready and saying, I really need help, but I really need to address my addiction, what's going on with me, and these traumas that have happened. So the team has a vehicle which transports the individual to the location. We actually have to find a bed, do all the case management that goes with that, try to get all that in place, which takes a little bit of time. But that's where Union Station has actually come in our hotel vouchers, to sometimes offer a 1 night or to hold whoever we're supporting to be able to find that bed. And sometimes it's like, it happens on a Friday, so we're able to hold someone and then support them, take them to that appointment on Monday. So that's something that we actually do. All our services are field-based. And we actually support them getting from point A to point B. And it's that human connection that had actually allowed, and we actually have a lot of participants who I will say have been clean for 6 or more months and are working on getting housing, getting, working, are employed. And it's really because of the connection that they have with the team and the model that we're serving. We have seen a reduction in our calls, in our 911 calls, and the impact that it's had. And so this is how we basically function. So no client comes to the office, we actually go to them. And that's the other thing, that when you're really looking at transportation and the issues around getting on the bus, or you're not able to walk, often people assume, where you're at the bus stop and you're not moving. But often when we go, we do find that they're not able to walk or move, or there's other issues going on. So having a team that really goes to the street and works with, our participants is really something that we've really seen is effective. I don't know, they can explain more a little bit, but we're collecting more information and doing so. So I can have them talk about. Oh.
Hi, I have a question. How do they find you and how do you find them?
We actually, at the beginning, as anything, when you're starting a new program, you're actually promoting and, going out to the community. They are doing outreach. However, now.
So I think
Yeah.
they drive around. Went on a ride-along. We drive around the streets of Pasadena. They've established relationships so they know where people probably or might be. And then we find new people that we meet. Right.
And also we're having, one of the things that's working right now is that we're having other participants refer. So we're actually not as much doing now the outreach that we call, or really looking. They're actually calling us because their friend actually got services, or they're connected. And I think that's the level of trust that's happening, is saying, hey, Tony helped me, call him. And so we're getting now the call. So what we started as outreach, going around, driving around and looking for individuals and building those relationships, are now, we're working within that community. So we've seen that shift from, that initiative to this type of partnership. So
I will tell you, it's minimal outreach now, and now our phone is ringing. Instead of us going to them, they're coming to us now. So people will say, we offer so many services to the homeless, and that's why there's a lot of homeless coming here. Our service is something that we're not giving the food, we're not doing that. They're coming to us because they want to change their lives. So that's a service that we want for the homeless individuals.
And I thought, it was good for me to learn that most of the people that you're talking to, they have ties to Pasadena. They're not coming to Pasadena to hang out and get services. They're people who are from Pasadena or have family here. And I thought that was...
School here.
Yeah.
went to school.
Yeah, well, I have a bit of a story about the Hollywood Education Literacy Program. If I'm correct about this, it started with a woman who was approached by a man. She asked him, why are you doing that? He said, I can't fill his job applications. So she said, well, I'll tutor you so that you can. Will you do that? He did. She now has a permanent location called the Hollywood Education and Literacy Program, helping many, many people. So it's a service that is about the ability of a person to change their life.
Thank you for sharing that.
How does this, seems like public health, maybe first responder outreach group, work with the housing department and all of their team efforts, the HOPE is it, and permanent supportive housing efforts, and there are other teams going on within the city. How does this all work?
Well, what I've seen happen with our program and then the other programs that are gone is that we're starting to collaborate now. Before, like we always say, everybody was in silos. And now we're starting to see a shift, like everything else, and we're all starting to get together. We're doing case management together. We're talking. We're texting each other. We're calling each other on a daily basis, and we have meetings every month with these individuals, and we all come together with all, like Friends in Need, Union Station, LASA, Hope Team.
Our housing.
Housing department. We're all coming together now, because this is a crisis, and now we're starting to deal with it the right way.
question?
Yes.
Will you introduce?
I'm wondering how much time you spend at the Gold Line, the Fillmore Station, and the Del Mar Station?
Okay, so what we did is we started to work our way east,
Oh, okay.
because that's where a lot of the calls were coming from for us to come check out. And if you had, so Jefferson Park, Allen Station, the Lake Station, those were high traffic. If you go there now, you're going to see minimal homeless people, and it's the collaboration from the whole team. It's a collaboration with the fire department and housing and all these other organizations like Union Station, where we went out there and instead of enforcing and putting them straight to jail, which they'll come right back out, we've gotten, like, from the Jefferson Park, I think we got like 4 or 5 people housed or into rehab. So we're seeing the shift, and then they see their friends, like we said, they said, oh, this team has helped. I want them to help us because now they can trust us. Because that's the big thing, is trust. You think about a child, you teach your child not to take candies from a stranger. And that's the same kind of mentality that these individuals have. We're strangers to them and they don't trust us.
Correct.
So it's just like a child.
I know that there are a lot of talk about homeless in parks. How are you able to work with that population?
The homeless in the park?
Yeah.
It's a combination between police department and teams like us, because there has to be enforcement. So if they're not obeying by the rules, like not being out of the park after 10 o'clock, it has to be enforced. If there's open containers, that has to be enforced, and that's something that's not tolerable. And then that's another part of the reason why you see people transition out of it, because we're starting to enforce those areas. So like you said, we're making our way west to Fillmore Station. Just this week we started to hit Central Park, and we're starting to build that trust right now, and it's going to take a while. It might take a month, it might take 2 months to build that trust, and then once they see the trust building with us, then the others are going to follow right behind it.
So we're going to move on to the next topic, but Steve, just wanted you to introduce yourselves one more time, in the mic, if you could. Could you just say your name and your position?
My name's Tony Z, fire department. Been with the department for almost 16 years now, and now I'm part of this team for a couple years, getting it started. And you can call us anytime. We'll come in. If you see an encampment or something, we'll come and check it out.
My name is Angelica Palmeros, and I'm a social worker, also serve as a division manager, and I've been with the city close to 18 years.
She's the creator of this program.
My name is August Jimenez. I work with Union Station Homeless Services and the Port Team, and also the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority.
Hi, my name is Sandra Olivas. I'm a social worker case manager, and I've been with the department for 25 years in June.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Dr. Go. And hope you can stick around and participate in the other parts of the discussion. I want to mention quickly, homelessness is also right up at the top of the list, I think, for our residents right now. A deep compassion, concern, and also a sense that, it can affect the quality of commerce and the enjoyment of folks. And so we're fighting for resources. What we really need in this regard are resources. And the governor, you probably saw, just put $1.4 billion into his proposed budget for homeless and affordable housing projects. We're going to compete strongly for those, our share of those, that is. I'd mentioned 2 projects that I'm very proud of in our district. One is Habitat for Humanity, built 9 single-family homes down at Desiderio. We have 9 families living there. We have 3 deployed veteran families that are back and are living there. And among the 9, this is the statistic I get the most kick out of, is 29 school-age and preschool-age children living in those 9 homes, 29. So that's a great project. We also, thank you, we also acquired a Caltrans home on Waverly, just west of the freeway stump, and we have 3 low to moderate income single women living there. That's affordable housing that the city has acquired and is operating as such, and we intend to do more of that as well. So It's good stuff. We did have, last night, we had the Metro, LA Metro, what used to be called MTA, the Regional Transportation Agency, with us, and they made a long presentation to council and had a lot of Q&A, and some of these issues also came up about, the homeless that congregate around the Gold Line stations. And one of the questions I asked was, you've got to have turnstiles for the Gold Line, because right now it's just an honor system. What's interesting is as they've extended the line out further east, they're installing turnstiles in the new stations. So they know that's the right way to go. I want to see them come back and install them at the stations in Pasadena. And the sheriff's department was there. They do the policing in collaboration with our police department, obviously, of the line and the areas around that. So from time to time, they did an operation just, I think in the last few days at Fillmore, where there were a lot of sheriff's deputies there contacting the homeless who are regularly there and all. But, it's an issue that we're not going to give up on. And I should mention, next week we're doing our annual homeless count. I say we, I think it's actually a nonprofit that the city assists and participates in, and that's on January 21st and 22nd. And I'm trying to recall, Steve Mermel, can you direct us to who? Is it Friends Indeed, or is it Union Station? That why don't you do this? We'll make sure.
Spot, I'd say look at the housing department's webpage.
Right. I was just going to say, if you go to the city website, just cityofpasadena.net, and go to the housing, and as of 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, go to our District 6 website too, and we'll make sure we have information for you. If you're interested in participating in that homeless count, you can. You also need training, though, to be able to do that. Taka. Okay. Well, I never let a silly deadline stand in the way of volunteers that want to do something positive. So,
This training's on Thursday at 1 to 2:30 at the housing department.
fabulous. Yeah. And deadline, schmedline. If you want to participate, you let us know, and we'll make sure you can participate in that training. Yeah. It's a good thing to do. So why don't we move now to John Perez, our police chief, who is the ultimate supervisor of those 3 HOPE teams. And that's not the subject of this presentation, but it does follow up well with Dr. Go. We're actually moving to 4 HOPE teams. And what those are is 1 police officer and 1 social worker that are focused primarily on the issues of homeless. I also want to introduce a great police officer who's now a lieutenant, and he's the adjutant for the chief, and that's Bill Grisafe. He's here as well. Thank you, Lieutenant, for being here as well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. And before I get into the details here, I want to thank everybody who's here who works on the homeless issue, all our partners in the city. It's fantastic. One of the things we did last year collectively, and thanks to the city manager, was create a homeless project committee. Their job was to now connect everybody together, so we weren't working in silos. So the fact that we were working collectively on some of these issues. We are experimenting in different areas. We're learning who has vouchers, who's not using vouchers, why they're not using vouchers. We're trying to understand the makeup of how much of this is drug abuse related. We're talking about a smaller amount of the total population. And what I've learned in reviewing the work being done out there and walking through Fillmore Station myself is that a small portion of our homeless people is what causes the problems. A larger portion that are homeless is problematic. They need our help. They need shelter, different types of shelter, whether it be permanent or temporary. They need assistance. And so what we've seen is the need to separate this a bit and to look at the ones that are creating or committing crime. We have to admit to ourselves there are some that are absolutely committing crime. It is a small percentage of the total 500 or 600 that we look at. In fact, I had a report done not too long ago, and we're probably looking at about 70 that come in and out of our jails regularly for intoxication, drug use, these type of things. And we have to really focus on the criminal element from the police department standpoint, but as well work cooperatively with the other departments like Port that does a fantastic job, the housing departments, the health department, and we're starting to understand the problem a bit better. But to do that, we all have to agree that the majority of homeless people need our help. We have to find a way to get them the help they need. We also have to agree there are some that break the law and are committing criminal acts that have to be addressed either by citation or by arrest and booking in our jail. There was one individual on Green not too long ago that was causing problems for a business. And myself and one of the lieutenants went out there and did some foot beat, and in talking to business owners, we discovered they're out there all day. This one homeless person was causing, doing lewd acts and causing problems for many. So in 24 hours, we arrested him 4 times. Now you may say to yourself, what are you guys doing? The 4th time they went to court, the judge mandated the person to health services for 6 months. And we have not had that person return back to Pasadena. We're in the 8th month, I believe, already. And so we don't know if that's the solution. It's not the solution for most of the homeless people. It is a solution for some, that we need the courts to give us the authority, to give them the help that they need for the drug abuse, for the mental health issues, and I think we're getting there. And so I appreciate every work that they do and everybody else in doing this. But the Homeless Project Committee, as we move forward, you might not see it. It's not a public forum. It's made up of all the departments in the city, of all the people doing this work. So we connect every single month on the things that we need to do as a team. So I think it's working, and so we'll continue to do that. So with that, we are adding a 4th HOPE team, and that'll take me a few more months to do. And I will get into our department reorg in just a moment, but I think you want to hear about crime. There's 2 parts of crime. Actually, you know, and each one can be broken down. The first is the citywide view of crime, and I'll touch on that just for a moment. And we have our 3rd year of a slight crime decrease again. We have dropped crime about 10% over the last 3 to 4 years. Violent crime is down. The amount of gang activity we have citywide has been down. The amount of people being victimized by being shooting victims has decreased as well. And so we have efforts to make sure that we're trying to be at the right place at the right time to stop crime. When we can't do that, our responsibility is to stop the crime trends that occur and try to arrest those people that are responsible for that. So that's that part. So we break it down a little bit further. This is to where your area is at, where you live. I think sometimes we talk about the general perspective of crime, but we don't get into your neighborhood and what's happening on your street, because crime could be down 20% in the city, but there's 3 residential burglaries on your street. That is the most important thing, and it should be the most important priority in our lives. So for this area in District 6, we have roughly 25,000 people, and we're looking at a crime rate that we have about 800 crimes per year. We are looking at about 9 burglaries, residential burglaries per month, and about 10 to 11 auto burglaries per month as well. And so at this point, we had a spat of burglaries in November and December. We had 6 that happened around the Avenue 64 area, if you recall that. Some of you may know some of your neighbors. And we did arrest a couple of people inside of a suspicious vehicle. And we don't know if they were going to, planning a burglary or not, but we've seen the burglaries drop off over the last few weeks. We've put more officers in the area. We're using our volunteers to go in these neighborhoods. And obviously, it'd be great if we could keep them there all the time, but our resources do move around the city. It's a large city, and you can never have enough police officers to be everywhere you would want them to be. So part of this, I would ask on your end, is prevention. We had 1,700 false alarms this past year in our Area 6, which means that either a window was open or the alarms weren't set correctly and they went off. So it is important for us when you can, number 1, to use your alarms as often as you can. Number 2, make sure your windows are closed, and that when you activate them, you wait to ensure that when you drive off, your alarm's not going off, because we will get there, we will walk through the area, but you'll be long gone. So we want to make sure our responses are real and they're helpful. So trying to reduce burglaries on one end is our job, to be in these neighborhoods. If you don't see us enough in your neighborhoods, you have to let us know that we haven't been in your neighborhood, and we'll make sure we arrange for our patrols to get where they need to be. Not always simple, but it's a commitment that we make. The burglar alarm, the false alarms, really falls on your end. Sometimes people set the motion detectors inside the home, and they forget they have a dog that runs around the inside that will set the motions off. So you have to remember to turn off the motions if you do have a dog inside. We do ask that you lock your doors when you're leaving the house. Most burglaries we see usually occur when people leave just for 5 minutes. Just down to the grocery store, just down to an area, and they didn't think anything was going to happen. And so this is one of those things where you want to make sure you lock those doors and windows, use that alarm system when you can. The other type of calls that we get, when you look at the ones that are generated by our residents, happen to be mostly around the area of our hillside homes. And the situation up there with the young people, we are up there a lot on return runaways, but very little violence occurs on that property or those type type of disturbances. It's more to the point that we get called there to take the report of a missing juvenile or the fact that they've returned. The other areas we spend time, Central Park receives our calls for service. South Raymond near Union Station, a couple hundred calls per year. We're also at Central Park about 100 times a year based on citizen-initiated calls, and we spend about 300 times a year where the officers go out on their own into these areas. When you look at our crime stats of what occurs, it's relatively low. But when these crimes do occur, we have to ensure that we provide some type of crime prevention and outreach services. So again, I would ask of you, if we're not in those areas where we need to be, that you let us know by email, by phone call, that you really reach out to us where you can. Most of our calls, the majority of our calls are in fact transient homeless related. And there are either issues between the homeless and having disagreements or squabbles or whatever it might be, or they might in fact be generating calls because of where their cart's at or where they decided to sleep for the night. And we're also seeing an increase in these incidents where the officers are forced to wake up homeless people off the sidewalk, blocking a way, or in the street, and the homeless people too wake up aggressive towards the officers. So one of the things that we've worked on over the last 18 months was to reduce the chances of having a one-on-one engagement with these officers, and we call use of force. Our use of force is down by 35%. We are using de-escalation processes. We're giving officers immersive training to understand stress-related decisions that they have to make, and really reduce the use of kicks and punches to control people by 80% based on the officer's ability to use other type of moves. So it's one of those things where we'd rather have cooperation, but the tough thing about cooperation, it requires two people. And so we could want it as much as we want, but we need it from the other side as well. So these are things that we're working towards. I'll get into the reorganization, which is important based on what we're talking about tonight. The department is it's restructuring its resources in the department. Maybe the largest reorg that I've seen in my 35 years in the organization. And we are moving our resources around so they're mission-based and very purposeful on the things that you need. I'll give you an example. We returned to a bicycle team back in 2018. We had lost a bicycle team back after the recession. We reduced our number of officers, and so we brought that unit back in 2018, and they've always been roaming around to problem locations in places where we were needed, such as Fillmore Station and other places. But I noticed that each one, much like our resources for homeless, many of our resources were functioning in silos. So I took our Hope team, our bicycle team, as well as our park safety specialists, and I moved them with a manager, a lieutenant, into one section where they work together every day on a mission-based approach to homeless issues, problem location, chronic problems that we have, and we're able to address these issues in that way. So our goal for 2020 is to reduce our call for service volume that we have. The city of Pasadena receives about 354,000 phone calls into our dispatch center every year. We deploy about 150,000 calls for service for our officers that go out to handle different type of problems in our community. And so it's important for us to really look at this call volume and separate them into categories to see where we could in fact do something about the calls. We have a motel I should say, on the east end of town that's generated 1,000 phone calls in 2019, and now we're looking at a way to try to shut down that hotel through the help of our city attorneys and other people. We're doing the same thing with Hillside. We go out to the Vons grocery store here in California about 250 times a year that you guys all shop at. Most of that is transient related. So we're going to look at the store, we're going to look at the inside, we're going to really break down these calls for service and try to understand why are they going to that location, what's happening, what are they stealing, are they fighting, is it the lighting? So our goal over the year is to reduce our call for service volume on a smart approach to look at the environment, to look at different aspects, and to look at really ways for us to reduce our focus so you see us more often. And so that's where we're at with most of our reconstruction of the department. So that'll start to occur in February, and we hope to have most of this done by 2021. With that, I think it's important to answer any questions you may have specifically on crime. Things that you're seeing, not seeing, requests from us, anything I could really get to would be helpful. Yes?
There's been an electronic sign on Linda Vista, see something, say something, that's been there for over the weekend.
Mhm.
And I was wondering if there was a reason why it was put there, and what the reason was or was not.
Repeat the question.
So we have a See Something, Say Something digital sign over on Linda Vista in the 100 block of where it's at. It's at,
Maybe 300-400.
you're right there off of, yeah, right when you go up to the Rose Bowl, right to the top. And so we do that for people. The reason that signage is there, we have many people that park down at the Rose Bowl. And many times they leave their iPads and things on the seats that people could see. It's a reminder for two sets of people. One for ourselves. If we do see something, say something. You should have our phone number, our 744-4241 number on all your cell phones. You could easily hit it, call us, and report something suspicious. The other side of it is that the bad guys know that we're out there, to make sure they're aware. And it does help to reduce crime when we have the signage. So we have to be smart enough to move it around when we need to. And we might put it up for special events and other things like that. But for the most part, it's made for us to remember to call. And number two, for the people committing crimes to know that we are out there. And somebody will call on them if they're looking into car windows or anything else.
Other questions?
You just mentioned the number. You might put it on the sign.
I'm not sure the sign, the number's probably not on there, is it?
No.
I thought there was.
4241?
Yeah, so what you should do in your phones, if you asterisk 744-4241 on your phone, that'll be the first number that comes up on your mobile phone, if you asterisk it first. And so it's important for everybody to have. But 626-744-4241, thank you for the suggestion for that. I think most people probably dial 911, right? So it's not always the best thing. We've had people call the dispatch center and want to know who won the Super Bowl before. And those actual call. So it's probably a good idea.
That number one more time?
626-744-4241. Before the number.
Printed on my phone. I also have
That's
it
brilliant.
printed on
Oh,
my
that's
phone.
fantastic, yes.
I have it, just in case I.
That's fantastic for us.
I just put asterisk and my John Perez comes up on my
Yeah, there you go.
Fortunate I guess.
That'll work.
Yeah. Chief, I want to thank you for being here. You'll recall that I urged us last budget cycle to have more police officers in the police. And I know you need to be measured because the city manager is the ultimate supervisor of pretty much all the staff and all, but I'm going to come back again on this budget cycle. You know, I think we are actually down from the number of officers that we had 10, 15 years ago. And I think we need to get back to that because our population has not gone down. I think we need more motor officers for traffic safety. It's great to hear about the bikes. It's great to hear about the homeless HOPE teams as well. And also I want to express my solidarity with law enforcement. You'll notice the black band on the Chief and Lieutenant Grisafi's badge. That is in memory of Amber Lice, the sheriff's detective who was killed over the weekend off duty, was helping an elderly citizen across the street. And it's a sad reminder of the dangers out there. Yes, in the back row.
How do we recommend to the city to up the police force?
To do what?
To get more police officers, how do we recommend that?
It's a great question.
As you just did, city manager's right here.
Yeah, you did. That's one way, but I would also urge all of you to keep an eye on that city website. In particular, go to the government, city council agendas, and each week the agenda is published as it comes up, and in the budget cycle it'll be pretty easy because we get into a flow with the budget, and we'll have the different departments will come up. Usually police is at least 2 or 3 different hearings, as is fire. So come to those hearings or send me an email, send the chief, the city manager an email. But that's a great question. And you know, people think, oh, what does one voice matter? Or you can ask some of the advocate, Robin Salzer or Nina Chomsky, or many of you who do come down to city council. We listen, believe me. So one person of principle can make a difference in this world. So I urge you to do that, please. All right, thank you very much, Chief. And I know on the burglaries, there was a bad burglary on South San Rafael. There's going to be a neighborhood meeting, I think, coming up on that. I'm going to try to attend that, and It is. It's a horrible thing. Any crime, a property crime, is one that makes us feel violated in our home, and so we want to make sure we do everything we can to support it. I'm reminded also your comment about the Super Bowl. At one of my town hall meetings, we told the neighbors, you know, we've got undercover officers out, plain clothes, doing surveillance. And he said, see, that's a problem with City Hall. You don't tell us when the undercover officers are going to be there and where they're going to be. I said, yeah, problem with the concept of undercover police work there. But so last and certainly not least, very important, all times of the year, I think you must know what's happening in Australia in the last month. And if we ever needed a wake-up call about the impact of climate change and the risk of fire there, I actually proposed formally that we send 2 firefighters down to Australia to assist in that effort. I think we can learn from them, they can learn from us, and I think it's the right thing to do. We've had international firefighters come to California with some of our brush fires when we were in trouble. There's some funding issues around that and some federal regs that we're working through, but in any event, it's timely that you're here. Fire Chief Bertrell, Washington, please come on up. Thank you.
Good evening, and certainly I'd like to just thank again the council member for inviting me to be able to come here and tell you a little bit about the great work that our Pasadena Fire Department team is out there doing. Hopefully when you came in, you had an opportunity to see some of the handouts that we brought. And one is just our fiscal year 2019 information sheet. This also went out in our city manager newsletter. And so this is something that you could see, just get a glance, a little bit about what we do. But as the police chief spoke about, and the prevention is a big deal for us. The firefighters spend a lot of time doing public education and outreach because we don't want to have to respond when you have an emergency, an injury or illness, a fire or something like that. So we're very pleased by, in fiscal year 2019, our call volume dropped a little over 400 from the previous year. And so it has been incrementally slowing as far as the growth over the past 5 years. And the difference between fiscal 18 and 19, we actually saw a decent drop. So that really says a lot about what our women and men within the Pasadena Fire Department are out there doing. And again, you heard a little bit from Port earlier with really the efforts that we're making with the homeless population. There's a few other things that you might note. You can see that the prevention, over 8,000 inspections that happen annually throughout our city. And so again, instead of waiting for a fire to occur, they're out there doing the inspections and just checking on fire systems and alarm systems and brush just to make sure that we can prevent fires from occurring. And so you might also note, and again, the police chief spoke because we partner with so many things and we approach different things a certain amount of ways too. So he spoke a little bit about breaking calls down in categories. And so one of the things that you'll see in the bottom right corner of the sheet is the top 5 dispatched incident types. And so fire alarms is one of our high call volume incident types, and major falls is also another one. And so a couple years ago, we changed some things that we do with the code on fire alarms. And this year, what we did was we started doing outreach in some of the communities and some of the senior living spaces where we did training on how they can prevent themselves from falling. And so we saw an immediate impact after that training. So those are just a few things to point out on this information sheet. Would love for you to take one and give feedback. Thank you. Next, I'd just like to share a little bit with you. We also do community emergency response team training. And so what we do is we engage you. The community is a part of our mission. If you read our mission, you'll see that you are a part of that. And so what we spend time doing also with the city manager's office is training you on how to survive if a major emergency or disaster occurs. And so our next major full full CERT training is going to take place at the end of the month. It's going to be hosted by Caltech, and we're going to train about 50 more members of the community how to respond and how to assist us in our overall mission. And so again, we always welcome you to let us know if we can come out and do that training in your neighborhood. We also have the 4-hour awareness trainings, and so those are a little bit easier to get to. Our full course is 21 hours over about 4 days, but the 4-hour course is something that will be a good starter for you. And just as I'm speaking about that, we also have Map Your Neighborhood. So if you haven't heard of it, again, we would encourage you to visit our website or just reach out to me personally, and we can get out to your neighborhood, to your block, and teach you how to map your neighborhood and how that can benefit you in a major disaster. So also I'd like to share with you just a little bit of information with another handout that we have out there. But before I do do that, what it's tied to is the work that we do with our vegetation management program. So as you know, especially in this district, we spend a lot of time with brush and clearing brush and assessing brush and inspections and things like that. So one of the most important things is if a fire occurs, if a major brush fire occurs, we want to be able to contact you. And so the other handout that's out there is this one here, which gives you some information about how you can sign up for PLEASE, a Pasadena local emergency alert system. And so we would really beg of you to sign up for that. So if something occurs, again, we can reach out to you a variety of ways. It allows you to register your mobile phone, your email, your home phone. You can put up to about 6 or 7 different contacts in this system, and we will reach out to every one of them. We won't share the information. You don't have to worry about that. We will keep it private. We will keep it protected. But if an emergency occurs, we will reach out to you through that system. And you can also sign up to receive other pieces of information from the city. So besides that, what we're also doing, because again, it's been rainy and we know that it's going to get dry again, and we know we're going to have brush that can burn. And so in addition to you signing up for PLEASE, beginning in March, we're also going to start sending out mailers to give you information about how to protect your homes from fire. And then in April, we're going to start sending our firefighters out to go do the vegetation management program in inspections. And keep in mind that first inspection, there's no charge. Right. So again, we're just trying to get out there and do the best we can to make sure the community is as safe as possible. And now if we have to re-inspect and re-inspect, then you could see some charges there, but we aren't charging for the inspections. And then we'll also coordinate closely with our Public Works department. And so they actually hire contractors and have teams that will go and clear the hazardous areas that we identify. So again, we will start that project over. Of course, we will make ourselves available to meet with associations as we've done over the past couple of years, and just ensure that we have as much information as possible to identify the most vulnerable areas. What we're also going to do is expand the Summer Rose program that we experimented with in 2019. So this gave us an opportunity to tap into some funds, some grant funds, and train and teach the youth how to help us clear brush and pay them. So that's something that we're going to expand in 2020. So you heard a little bit about what Port's doing and a little bit about the homeless encampments. We also know that that's a concern, and that's something that we spend a lot of time with. So just a little bit of information regarding that. We've actually seen a decrease in the homeless encampment fires. And again, we have the police department, our fire investigators, the Port team that you heard from doing a lot of great work visiting the encampments. And so we had 3 fires in the past quarter, and that was a decrease. So that was a lot of good work there. Our port team and our fire investigators are endeavoring to continue going out and visiting the encampments. One, to make sure they have the services that they need, hopefully get them into some housing and away from the encampments. So beyond that, I would also just like to share with you the port program that Dr. Clow gave some information about. We are confident that it's being effective because we also see or find that some other cities are reaching out so that they can replicate what Pasadena is doing. So with that, Councilmember Madison, that's it. You're welcome.
For Chief Washington? Yeah, you do have to pay attention when the firefighters come around with the recommendations about trimming back the brush from the house and the like, and I know you'll also see them out spraying. I've forgotten the name of the fire prevention retardant that they spray, Phos-Chek, yeah. They'll be out spraying in the arroyo especially. That's what keeps council members up at night, I'll tell you, is the idea of getting a fire that could come roaring down the arroyo. And but we know we're not going to let that happen, so thank you, sir. Yeah, thank you. I want to open it up for broader questions. Before I do, though, I want to introduce just a couple people, and then there's an important presentation from the Red Cross that some good friends of mine are going to make real quick. But before I do that, I just want to thank Renee Plave is in the back with Water and Power. She's got some goodies and info back there for you. I want to introduce Royce Jamerson, who's with God Save the Mark, Census 2020. We're already upon the decade census. It's in the, I was told we're in the roaring 20s now again, so woohoo. But with that comes a census. I've already thanked the Humane Society. I want to thank my friends at Pasadena Media for video and broadcasting, and that's Danny Hess there, who also works our council meetings, and also Charles Winters, and Diego is our cameraman here, and he won't move away from the camera to acknowledge, but please thank them. Thank you. And then Red Cross has a program called Map Your Neighborhood, and the sergeants are here, Mike and Deborah, good friends of mine, and can you welcome them? And they just have a word or two they want to say about that program. Thank you, Mike. Thank you.
You heard Chief Washington that the city of Pasadena encourages individual blocks, you know, your personal block, to do Map Your Neighborhood training. It's an organizational program that helps you, first of all, meet your neighbors, and second of all, prepare for that hour after a disaster. My name is Mike Kasarjian. Red Cross is offering to facilitate Map Your Neighborhood on your block. So if you provide a meeting place, someone's living room, someone's front lawn, we will come and do everything. You don't have to sign up as block captain. You don't have to volunteer for anything. We'll take care of the meeting. We'll take care of organizing your block. We'll even take care of inviting your neighbors. It's just a matter of, is your block interested? Sign up with my wife back there or with me after the program. Map Your Neighborhood is not another lecture about water, you know, storing water and storing supplies. That's personal preparedness. That's absolutely essential, but that's not what Map Your Neighborhood is. Map Your Neighborhood is for that hour after the earthquake or after the windstorm, before the emergency providers can respond, and what you can do there. Experience in tornado and hurricane areas shows that areas where neighbors know each other and they have thought in advance about what they're going to do when the tornado or hurricane hits, recover much faster. They're more resilient, both physically and emotionally, and that's what we're looking here for, is resilience. So the question is, do you know exactly what to do in the hour after a major earthquake or major windstorm? Red Cross will present the 9 steps that you should take in the hour after. It's a 90-minute presentation in a home on your personal block with your personal neighbors. We like to do 20 homes at a time, and I hope that you can sign up for more information. You're not signing up, you're not committing to anything, just signing up for more information after this meeting. And just to be clear, there's no charge for any of this. Red Cross will not accept a donation for this, so you can't even donate if you want to at the Map Your Neighborhood program. There's no advertising or anything like that. It's just, the only agenda is to help Pasadena be more resilient. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mike and Deborah. Nina Chomsky, please.
The state of California apparently is going to conduct its own census to be sure that the count is correct vis-a-vis the federal count. Do we understand yet how that's going to work?
I certainly don't, but I'd invite Steve Mermel or Rice Jamerson to comment if you're aware of the state efforts to census, to have a state. No? Okay. Steve, have we heard about that yet?
Briefly, and we're pretty engaged in it. Our city clerk, Mark Chomsky, is running point on the issue. There's a tremendous concern in California of an undercount. We could lose one or potentially more seats in the House of Representatives, depending on the count. So the state's making money available, the county's making money available, the city council's made money available to shore up our efforts. And again, the clerk is working with a number of organizations here in town to make sure we do a full count. We appreciate the assistance available from the Census Bureau. So I'm not aware of a second count that the state is doing, but we're doing everything we can, and we'll continue.
Well, maybe it hasn't really started, but apparently it's in the governor's budget, some sort of second count idea. But
all right, well, we've already committed money. Mr. Madison and his colleagues on council have already put money there, and we've already lined up with local nonprofits because it's vital. And it's all going to be online. Just like the voting, as Mr. Madison was referring to earlier, they're not going to mail the form to people's homes. You're going to have to fill it out online at a location. You can imagine a lot of people may be reticent to do that. So it's a big effort for the state.
Yes, please.
Every time I go over the Holly Street Bridge, I think about the structural strength of the bridge. And I'm curious as to whether or not the city monitors the structural integrity of the Holly Street Bridge, because it's so utilized for the art center and, you know, whatever. I mean. Yes,
this is something we know.
Just get inspected.
Yeah, we know a great deal about, and I think I've even seen a report about Holly Street Bridge. But did you fill out a card? And I'll make sure that you get a more detailed follow-up about that. But the answer is yes. We're well aware of the needs that we have in the city in terms of infrastructure like that. Okay, other questions? Yes, Lee.
A question for Chief Washington. The city website tells us in the event of a big earthquake or whatever disaster, that information will be available at the fire stations. And my question is, what information will they have and how will it be displayed and that sort of thing? Is there the website does not tell you these things. Also, I think there may be a little problem because if you look at the top of Glen Oaks, it may be a little bit of a walk down to Station 30. And what will be available at the station? Will you have locations of shelters? Will you have other?
Has everyone heard the question in the back? It's just a question about the availability of information as the city website directs at the local fire stations in the event of a disaster, that's a locus of information. I'm not sure it's intended other than just as a resource, Lee, right now, that we know that there would be information there because those are our first responders. But Chief, if you have any more details on that.
Yes, that's absolutely right. Additionally, so of course it depends on what the disaster is, but we will have the disaster information sites at the fire station stood up, and they will be in contact with staff at the Emergency Operations Center. And so any information or updates of what's going on, we can pass that information to our volunteers that will be at the disaster information site. Just to give you an example, if there's an issue at a school, then, oftentimes if all the parents go to the school instead of the disaster information site, fortunately we haven't had to use that yet, then we can get that information to the parent at that site, just to give an example.
Yeah, and in the event of a major disaster like that, I'm sure most of us remember the 2011 windstorms. Even from then, we've come a long way. So one tool we have is the reverse 911, where we'll be calling you like it's a 911 call and giving you information about what's happening and what you should do, what you shouldn't do. Also, we've got firefighters and police officers that actually go out into the neighborhoods and will try to reach residents if, for example, an area needs to be evacuated. That'll be happening too. I think it's one of of the big advantages of a city the size of ours is, we're big enough to have important aspirations and institutions, but also small enough to have a social contract with one another, where we know the individual men and women that'll be doing this stuff. So.
And I think the second part of the question, we also have signage. So we have dry erase boards, just to give an example, and we can put information there. So when people come up, then you can see the information. We have notepads. We have a cache of equipment there. And like Councilmember Madison mentioned, we have volunteers and we have staff, firefighters that go out through the community in vehicles and patrols. That might be one way that we can get to you. But also, as Mike and Deborah mentioned, Map Your Neighborhood. That's designed so that if there is an area that's hard to get to, your neighborhood, your block knows that, and you pre-plan how you can get out of that area.
We highly recommend the PERT CERT trainings, and we can help organize those as we have in the past. Preparation's the key, obviously, for these things. So, any more questions? I do want to get to the handouts that we have. We always have goodies at our event. And the good news, we have a couple of raffle gifts. The other good news is it's not a dog or a cat, although I'm sure we could arrange for that, and that would be a wonderful thing that could be taken home as well. All right, thank you all for coming, and we'll stick around if you want to chat. Thank you.